Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be talking about WWE Unreal, which is now streaming on Netflix, the latest Netflix sports documentary, if you will, and I'm going to be giving my thoughts on it, having watched I guess we can now say the first season today. 5 episodes released today, roughly 1 hour each. So I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the show as an overall. As someone that is a fan of wrestling, that we now cover the monthly PLEs on the videos, the fact that it's covering events from this year and this is when we started doing it, it works out quite nice with what we've spoken about historically. So I am going solo on this, and I'm just going to really add, this is more of a discussion on this series than it actually is a spoiler discussion or getting into the nitty gritty. There are plenty of clips that are all over Twitter already that a lot of people are talking about, a lot of things people are dissecting, and I won't have the time to individually go through every single wrestler and what we see, but I'm going to be talking about this series as an overall and what I think it brings to the table, certainly with the WWE offering some insights into the behind the scenes that we've never really seen before, and that has been a big selling point for me, and that has been my curiosity for the series, was how dangerous can it be to lift the lid on wrestling, because we're not idiots, we know that it is scripted, but we also know it's not fake. Anyone that says it's fake is still living of a 20-year ago obsession that they found out that things aren't real, and guess what, we talk about scripted stuff on this, it's a film and TV series channel, so I'm going to try and do my best to juggle this, the discussion, the topics, and I'm going to talk about what I thought as a wrestling fan and what worked, and maybe what worked as someone who's looking at it more from the film and TV perspective. I'd be really curious to know what people think if they don't watch wrestling, so please do comment your thoughts. And I'm going to be making a very, very noticeable comparison to another F1 series I talk about every year on here. It looks like this series is going to be every year moving forward too, so I will do so. But as always, you want to find out about the videos we're also working on, get us on social medias, Facebook, Letterboxd, Instagram, Blue Sky, all of which are in our Linktree description in the description below. But let's talk WWE Unreal. And I almost said Drive to Survive because the immediate comparison is Drive to Survive for this entire series, and that's also been my immediate concern for the series. I won't do a Drive to Survive review about F1. There's a playlist on our channel, you can find it on the homepage under the TV section, but that is a series that started very well in its first 2 seasons, and as the years went by, it became ridiculous scripted nonsense, past the point of documentary, more into reality Kardashian crap with pre-exposed storylines, scripted scenes, awkward remaking of real life events alongside fake editing, fake footage. So I've had a real concern of that, and that's just my overall perspective on the documentary. That's not even what this has done to F1 as a circus. So me having the fear of that every year and the people that come with it into watching F1, I then came into WWE Unreal very sceptical, knowing now that Netflix, they've done a golf series, there's been a tennis series, they're going to do a wrestling series. Wrestling at least is scripted entertainment, and it is something that has very historically had a closed door on Gorilla on some of the sequences that we get the time to explore. And that's where the positives come from of the F1 discussions, that when Drive to Survive began, it lifted the lid on the stuff we were never allowed to see on broadcast, on TV, the behind the scenes. And that's what I was looking for mainly. I was very nervous that this would be a PR-driven show. Granted, of course, it's PR. The fact Netflix already have the WWE deal, that all of their weekly shows are on Netflix here in the UK, worldwide. Obviously in America, they just get the PLEs in there, but they've got the library. So Netflix and WWE are pretty cozy at this point in time. And to do a documentary series in that position, it makes it somewhat more interesting that, okay, what can they do they don't already do? That was my selling point. What are they going to do that they can't? So to see Triple H essentially as the main character, the series opens with him. It essentially follows him in his role as Chief Content Officer throughout 5 episodes, spending a lot of time with the people around him. Unfortunately, we get a lot of Michael Hayes, but of course you're going to have to. Seeing other producers, timekeepers, writing processes, obviously wrestlers making appearances, board members, Nick Khan at times. There's a lot to take in with these 5 episodes. So I'm going to try and structure this into what I thought and how it works as a documentary. And if I kind of kickstart with the 5-episode structure, the first episode is about WWE debuting on Netflix back in January. Second episode is about the Men's Royal Rumble match. Third episode is essentially the Women's Royal Rumble match. The 4th episode is the big heel turn from Elimination Chamber. And the 5th one is Wrestlemania this year, covering the event and the characters we've seen throughout the first 4 episodes. So it's quite a simple formulaic process for the documentary. And what the show does really well, to its credit, is it very selectively is following wrestlers. It's not saying, here's 30 of them, come say hi to the cameras and we'll weave you around. It's not saying, like F1 does, you get an episode to yourself now. although Cena kind of does to an extent, but that's understandable with the stature of that episode. This is very much, we have a core group of characters, and we're going to follow their journey. And if you want to nail it down, January to April, that was the Rumble, well, that was the Raw to WrestleMania. And we get to follow different characters with different personalities and different storylines. And I really appreciate that. And some of them are big names. Some of them are the biggest names in the company. Just to name a few, Cody Rhodes, John Cena, CM Punk, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, all of which are massive names within wrestling. But it isn't everyone. It isn't, let's also chuck in Roman, let's chuck in Seth, let's chuck in Tiffy, let's put in Charlotte with her. Let's just put every feud character. No, they don't do that. It's very selective in who they are choosing to do so. And I think the show works so much better for it that if you are unfamiliar with these wrestlers, you get to learn a little bit about their lifestyles. They introduce you as their real life names. They keep calling the government names in this. And there's some that come off shining that are really interesting. There are others who have reputations within wrestling who you might get a bit of enlightenment to how they feel personally and as an individual. And I think it's very fair to say that Charlotte might be the person people speak about a lot when they go through her return, her injury, the crowd reactions to her coming back, heading into the feud of Tiffany Stratton, where it got very personal very quickly and sort of deviated. When you get the behind the scenes insight into things that have gone wrong, that's where this show absolutely flourishes. And that's not criticism of Charlotte, by the way. That is talking about a documentary where, rather than just pinpointing the things that work really well, this says, okay, this didn't work out, this is why this didn't work out, let's explain it to you, and here's how we're going to do it backstage behind the scenes. And bringing Tiffany in, forcing her to an apology. Things such as that I've really liked. And even when you get the payoff at WrestleMania, you then even have the two of them afterwards in Gorilla. So I was surprised WWE shared as much as they did, but I felt like it was right to characters to have character arcs within a 5-episode documentary. But with that in mind, there is also some concerns with this because, of course, wrestling is scripted, and we do not know how much more of this could have been scripted. So a concern of mine was, this is going to lift the lid too much. We're just going to spend like an hour in the writer's room. We're going to see them making back and forth on creative decisions, and it will be creative decisions where they say this is going to be great. It doesn't do that, and I'm kind of glad it doesn't, because we get to see ideas in the writing room. We get to see concepts of, could this work? This is what we've tried to do work. Some of them are better than what we actually got, but also injuries happen and you have to change and make different plans. So it was interesting seeing the narrative across the WrestleMania run. I think that's the best time to do a series like this. We do not need to follow wrestling for a year to make a show like this. I really hope when they say it comes back next year, I hope we're in the same time frame that they'll do Rumble through to Mania again, and it feels as natural as this does. I think this made the show work so much better, where even spending time with producers like The Abyss is now a producer, and we get to see him discussing Seth and Punk going over in that match back in January, and whilst one of the high-ups is sort of in his ear saying you've gone over, granted on that night The Rock went about 10 minutes over as he always does, it was a phenomenal match, and you got to see other hierarchies like your William Regals coming down saying don't worry about that was superb, you should be very happy. So I liked seeing the gorilla position, I liked seeing how that worked, and I'm glad the series builds it up with the wrestlers in those sequences and behind the scenes to then do that, because if this went wrong, this could really damage the product. And we know TKO is a mass conglomerate company. The sponsors all over the ring now on tables and ladders and everything that's getting so overboard. They absolutely would rinse this for money, but it doesn't feel like F1 where they've sold their soul for a chunk of a Netflix documentary. And I think that's where this series does work very well for me. So I've got a lot of credit to it there. Now, its structure as a documentary, I can't sit here and say I was gutted we didn't get to see this wrestler, that wrestler. That isn't really how this works on like Drive to Survive, because there's 20 drivers and 10 teams. You know, there's hundreds of WWE employees. And there's legends, there's behind the scenes stuff. So not everyone's going to get their chance to do that. And by focusing on the core few, you're able to spend time with them at home behind the scenes. There's a lovely moment with Jey Uso where they're at an event, they've got the photographers there, and it's him, his brother, his son, and Jacob Fatu. Now, they can never release that photo because in story, Jacob Fatu is a villain to them, but when he wants that to be sent to him personally to have, I like those sorts of things because we get to see the real person in the scenes, in those sequences, and that's where the show works. So I've been quite glowing on this already, and it was always tricky to review documentaries because you don't know what's accurate, what's inaccurate. Downside of this is that obviously we aren't going to know certain inaccuracies. it's great to get an insight into this is the story concept that other people wanted to do or couldn't do. At the same time as that, I know we're days away from SummerSlam. We also have real life news where the likes of Travis Scott have apparently fallen out with them, yet he's featured prominently in the final episode and final scenes of this, saying how wrestling is a dream, blah blah blah. So it's really interesting to also have the real life insight, and I think how it works as a documentary, it isn't groundbreaking in a documentary manner, but I think what this will do is if there are casual viewers or old school viewers who maybe haven't watched it for a while, this might lure them back in to give it a go, to have a look at some of the new characters, to take a bit of an interest and see where storylines are going to go. But I think the show is at its absolute best when you are spending time in Guerrilla, and you're spending time behind the scenes, the writing processes. Some ideas are terrible, by the way. Some ideas are amazing, but they can't always work. And I know that everyone's discussing the original WrestleMania 41 plan, which was way back in, I think, January that the show had it, or even December. So people are obviously going to dissect that. There'll be wrestling channels that dissect that. But for us as a film and TV series channel, I do recommend this. It's 5 episodes. It's not too much of a commitment. It's very interesting, and you kind of know where it's going to go after the first 1 or 2. But I've got to say, if I have a favourite episode, it's the heel turn one. Not just because of what they did to John Cena, but to show the process, the creative processes, the people that were involved, and how it came to be. Triple H is sat there talking about multiverses and alternate timelines because every single thing had to happen in a way for that to happen. And I quite liked that, and that is the biggest wrestling news story of the year as far as I'm concerned. That has been the biggest moment of the year, and it is very interesting to see them lift the lid on that so soon after. It doesn't feel like a typical, here's a documentary that will be on a DVD of a career of someone. This felt like this was a huge decision, and they even kind of say, like, there's a chance it doesn't work. John Cena says this, it's a 500-page book. He's on his last page, and he just says if the last page is crap, then the first 499 are forgotten about. Kind of sums it up. There's so much riding on this, and I think the show benefited for that. And for me as a viewer, at least as a wrestling fan, I am relieved. I'm relieved that the show was good, that it was interesting, and I vibed with it. I'm glad it hasn't ridiculed wrestling like what Drive to Survive has done, and it's way too soon to talk about new audience members, but I don't think we'll be looking at this saying, oh look, there's the WWE Unreal fans, when they're at events or online, because it isn't going to work like that. The wrestling comes first, and you've got to give credit to Triple H and the producers for ensuring that it does. Now, I know The Rock has had some say behind closed doors that he's very much had his image polished with this. It's not surprising, but he doesn't feature as much as we thought he would. But again, things might come out about the show in the future, so who knows. So yeah, that's going to be my review. A bit more positive than I thought it would be. As I said, it's difficult to discuss documentaries at the time, but talking wrestling, obviously at Summerslam this weekend, we will be having a spoiler discussion. The details of that are TBC. There are 2 nights, the first ever 2-night Summerslam. Maybe we'll have another guest on the channel, who knows. So there will be some more announcements. We've got a Naked Gun review coming out on Friday too. It's going to be a very interesting week ahead for the cinema. There's another video series starting on Thursday, which I'll put some more details on social. So as always, do follow us on our social medias. It's the best way to find out what videos we're working on, what we're up to. We've obviously just refreshed all of our Instagram feeds. We've got the new formats in place, so do get to us over there where we do release clips as well. So that is me rounding out. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.